Hi, I'm Jake. I make RPG supplements and videos about Pathfinder 2, or PF2. I love PF2. And Tian Xia is just the toy box that keeps vomiting up toys. I love this book. Familiars. I love familiars. From calligraphy worms to elemental wisps, familiars are magical creatures bound to a master through supernatural means. Characters of Tian Xia origin have access to the following specific familiars and familiar abilities. I think everybody should get to play with these, so I'm going to ignore that from here on out. But, you know, your GM might care. I don't. First, the familiar abilities, the new ones. Play dead. Your familiar pretends to be inanimate, hiding its supernatural capabilities. It can hide without any cover or concealment from creatures that don't realize it's alive. Sounds like a puppet. So long as it's in a location where it wouldn't seem out of place. If the familiar succeeds, onlookers still see it, but they mistake it for an inanimate object. This is exactly like a puppet. Like, this should have already existed. After being fooled once, they realize your familiar is alive and it can't hide from them in that way again. Okay. Great. It's necessary. Versatile form. Next. Familiar ability. The crafted body of your familiar allows you to make adjustments to it when required. Once per day, you can spend 10 minutes to change one familiar or master ability your familiar possesses. To select this ability, your familiar must be a construct, and you must be at least trained in crafting. For some people, that's going to be totally on point for their vibe, their feel, their theme. That's great. Some people probably won't care because they don't have things that they want to change out. I just realized, if you take versatile form, that's a familiar ability. Once per day, you can spend 10 minutes to change one familiar or master ability your familiar possesses. You can only do this once per day, and there's no restriction on it to prevent removing versatile form as the familiar ability you take away. So it's just a placeholder for another ability that you have to spend 10 minutes later to give it. That's cool. That's neat. That's a modular familiar. Alright, new master ability. Kindling. You can immolate your familiar's body for a surge of power. That sounds so cruel. Once per day is a free action when you cast a spell that has the fire trait, deals damage, and doesn't have a duration fireball. You can sacrifice your familiar to empower the spell. Your familiar is immediately slain, and you gain a status bonus to that spell's damage equal to twice the spell level. And that affects all the targets, not just the first one. I just want to be clear. Good. That's useful. I don't want to give up my familiar. Screw that. But for those that have, I don't know, final sacrifice, you can just use a second level spell to do a fireball anyway, instead of having the kindling master ability. Just have that spell. I guess this is a nice option. I don't see it as necessary, because you can still just use a spell to blow up your familiar anyway, if you would rather have fire than a familiar. I know, the radius might be different, so the area of effect might be more beneficial using this master ability, but then you have to give up a master ability. I don't know. It's sometimes useful, I guess.
Call it up.
Oh, okay. Loot! 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 Loodle noodle! Loot!
Wow, you really don't like fucking listening, do you?
He probably thinks I'm putting him away.
We don't have treats in here, do we?
I have the duck treats.
Okay.
Use it?
Just one, though.
He's gonna leave.
No, he's probably gonna bug you because he thinks he'll get more. We need more loot in the videos.
I know.
If our main audience is
likes cats. I don't disagree. I just think one isn't going to be very effective.
Gas is in the one loot.
Now what do I do?
You can have one too. call loot again.
Okay. Loot! There you go. Loot! 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 Loodle noodle!
Gas is like, I'm here. I'm a good kid.
Loot! Done? Loot!
Encouraging him to move.
I know you want it, but it's for him. I already gave you one. Loot!
Oh, his nose is gone. I think we might have gotten him. There we go.
Hi! Okay, you need to move. There you go. Specific familiars! Because who doesn't want more options? Kinnars. Alright, so I did brief amount of research. This isn't part of my cultural history, but the Kinnars are a Hindu and Buddhist mythology of beings of love and beauty. And they always come in pairs. Kinnars. The Kinnari seats herself, pressing an instrument of gourds and strings to her shoulder. The Kinnara stands ready, with his tail upright, preparing for his beloved's rhythm. Kinnars are half-human, half-songbird lovers who sing, dance, and perform for and with each other, forever accompanying each other in their arts. Severance creates suffering, and neither can stay apart from the other, else they both become heartbroken and die. God, that's sad. While most Kinnar pairings serving as familiars include a female Kinnari and male Kinnara, Kinnar pairings of different genders aren't uncommon. Kinnar familiars have access to all of their familiar abilities regardless of the genders of the Kinnars. Okay, cool. Readies his tail. Alright. Kinnars. They have the celestial trait and uncommon, like everything in this book. Required number of abilities, 6. Granted abilities, dark vision, independent, lifelink, manual dexterity, and speech. So that's 5. And they have a few abilities. Dazzling Show, it's 2 actions. It has the move and visual traits, frequency once per minute, effect. Your Kinnara... Sorry, I just keep thinking canary. Your Kinnara flashes his brilliant feathers. Each creature within a 30-foot emanation must attempt a will save against your class DC or spell DC, whichever is higher, or be dazzled for 2 rounds. Each creature? But allies. Poop. Soul Bond. They have the Soul Bond trait. Your Kinnar's spirits are intrinsically linked. While they're 2 beings, they're still considered a single creature, act as a single creature, use normal familiar statistics, and are subject to all the normal effects that come with being a single creature. Their linked spirits allow them to stave off attacks against their mind. If your Kinnars are subjected to a mental effect that allows a saving throw, they roll twice and take the higher result. That's cool. This is a fortune effect, obviously. That's cool. Okay. They also have the ability Vina Song. 2 actions. Auditory, concentrate, divine, incapacitation, and mental traits. Frequency once per hour. See below. Effect. Your Kinnari elegantly plays her instrument. Each creature within a 30-foot emanation must attempt a will save against your class DC or spell DC, whichever is higher, or be fascinated for 1 round. A Kinnar can use this ability again on the next round to continue the song and force affected creatures to attempt another will save. They're bards. Okay. On a failure, a creature is fascinated for an additional round. Once the Kinnar stops playing, they can't use this ability again for 1 hour. A creature that succeeds at any save or has its fascination broken is temporarily immune to that Kinnar's Venus song for 24 hours. Kinnars are immune to this ability, but your allies aren't. Okay, so I would just say that, just change it. Your allies aren't affected by any of these because that sucks. They can't be dazzled or fascinated by your pet. I think that was just an oversight. I'm going to assume it was because that sucks and you wouldn't use their abilities. So let's just assume don't affect your allies. That is a very useful pair of familiar because they have a lot of abilities and they're really hard to affect mentally. And lifelink is very nice, and so is independent, and so is manual dexterity, and speech is kind of necessary a lot of the time. I think it's a good selection. Next specific familiar, lantern wisps. Lantern wisps appear as colorful handmade lanterns aimlessly floating around in the dark of the night, seemingly always with its flame lit in full. That's cool. They house harmless little wisps that have settled into forgotten children's playthings. That's cute. All right, Lantern Wisp has the Construct trait, which is cool. Required number of abilities 6. Granted abilities Construct, Flyer, Kindling, which means you can kill it to make your fire spells do more damage. Resistance to fire and cold, and Tough, so extra hit points. So it costs you 6, and you get back Construct, Flyer, Kindling, Resistance of fire, Resistance of cold, and Tough. That's 6. And it has 1 ability. Stunning Flare. 1 action. Fire, light, magical traits. Frequency. Once per 10 minutes. Effect. Your Lantern Wisp unleashes a large burst of flame, casting an unnaturally bright light. Each creature within a 15-foot emanation must attempt a fortitude save against your class DC or spell DC, whichever is higher, or be blinded for 1 round, and then dazzled for 2 rounds after. That's extremely good if it's only going to affect your enemies. I don't like that it can affect your allies. It's still going to be useful either way, it just requires more strategization. Okay, fine. I still prefer it only affect enemies, not allies. So in my games, none of this shit affects allies. That is a good, useful, specific familiar, and I can see purposes for it. Okay, I am going to mispronounce this. I'm going to try, though. So, the next specific familiar is a Makhluk wayang. Makhluk wayangs are shadow puppets, pieces of show and tell made animate, carrying no more than the personalities they were crafted to inhabit. Unlike the wayang people, which is an ancestry in this book, your familiar is a shadowy incorporeal being without a body of its own. A Makhluk wayang possesses a simple puppet made of leather, or sometimes from thick parchment. Cardboard, basically. Okay, so Makhluk wayang. Construct, required number of abilities, 8. Granted abilities, Construct, Manual Dexterity, Play Dead, Speech, Tough, Versatile Form. So you get back 6. Its ability better be cool. Shadow Projection. 1 action, Shadow. Your Makhluk wayang projects its shadow into a larger silhouette of itself, allowing it to grasp things outside of its obvious reach. It increases its reach to 10 feet for the purposes of taking non-hostile interact actions until the end of your turn. Interact actions. 10 feet. Okay. So it can take from someone a bottle or item to hold, because familiars are creatures, they can hold things. So its reach for being able to pass things around is better. I don't know what else that means for interact actions. That's off the top of my head, that's it. So that is a unique, interesting ability. Is it worth all of those familiar abilities? I don't think so. But tell me what ideas you have for making that more useful. Because I could be missing something. I probably am. Next specific familiar, Shikigami. Shikigami are small spirits typically summoned and bound to a paper figure, so confined to carry out the deeds and embody the will of their masters. More often than not, the naivete of these amateur practitioners of esoteric magics means they'll find themselves at the mercy of their own Shikigami. Because what's the point of having a possessed piece of paper if it doesn't turn on you? Shikigami. Specific familiar. Construct. Required number of abilities. 6. Granted abilities. Construct. Flyer. Kindling. Play dead. Good. Tough. Good. Versatile form. So you get 6 after paying for 6. great. This is definitely workable. It has a lot of traits. So it has the flatten ability. Your familiar can flatten itself to the width of a sheet of paper, easily fitting through the smallest of cracks and gaps. So long as a door or other obstacle has a gap that can fit a sheet of paper, your familiar can move through it without needing to squeeze. That's cool! I like that! Hey, break into that building. Break into anything for me. That's great. Ooh, it might even be able to break into lockboxes or treasure chests. It just has to fit a sheet of paper. That's cool. Mass-produced. If your Shikigami dies, you can rebind its spirit to another paper doll during your next daily preparations. Okay, fine. Seal bearer. During your daily preparations, you can inscribe a symbol or seal upon your Shikigami that corresponds to the air, earth, fire, metal, water, or wood element. If you use the Shikigami's kindling ability that day, it applies to a spell that deals damage with the relevant trait to the chosen element instead of only the fire trait. That's neat. That's very flexible. I like flexible. Yeah. Let's do lightning damage instead. Or water damage. Last specific familiar. Tapir Sage. Uncommon and beast traits. Required number of abilities 6. Granted abilities dark vision, kin speech, speech, tool bearer, and valet. So you get 5 back. And valet is awesome. And tool bearer. Okay, this seems useful. It has 1 ability and 3 sub-abilities. Pot of Tea has the healing trait. Your Tapir Sage is trained in the art of herbal medication and can prepare a pot of healing tea. Once per day, your familiar can spend 10 minutes to brew fine tea leaves and herbs. Okay, I love this already. The Tapir Sage must focus on the tea during this time. If it performs any other action, the tea is ruined. Though the Tapir Sage can start over again, and it probably starts a tantrum or something. You ruined my tea! Once the pot of tea is brewed, the Tapir Sage can serve 2 cups of tea with each of the below actions. Each time, it gives 1 cup to an adjacent ally, and it drinks 1 cup itself. The 3 infusions must be poured and offered in order. For example, the Tapir Sage can't serve the second infusion until it has served the first. The tea remains good for 1 hour after brewing. If not drunk by this point, the pot goes cold, and any remaining tea loses its power. That's kind of adorable. Okay, so once per day, it does this little tea ceremony. And it gives 2 cups for each of these 3 infusions. So first infusion, 2 cups, and it drinks 1, and it gives 1 to the nearest ally. Second infusion, it drinks 1, and gives 1 to the nearest ally. Third infusion, it drinks 1, and gives 1 to the nearest ally. Okay. Alright. Each time, it gives 1 cup to an adjacent ally and drinks 1 cup itself. That's fine. So first infusion, 2 actions. The infusion restores a number of hit points equal to 1d8 times half your level, minimum 1d8, and grants a +4 circumstance bonus to the next saving throw against disease or poison attempted within 24 hours. That's really useful, if it does nothing else. Second infusion. The infusion restores a number of hit points equal to 1d4 times half your level, minimum 1d4, and grants a +2 circumstance bonus to the next saving throw against disease or poison attempted within 24 hours. Okay, so, you're spreading this around. Cool. Third infusion. The infusion grants temporary hit points equal to your level for 1 hour. Great. So it's healing itself, giving itself temporary hit points, and giving itself resistance from disease or poison, and doing the same thing for spread out among 3 people, or all of it to you because you're the master. This is a very neat and interesting, unique familiar. And it has valet, toolbearer, speech, kin speech, dark vision. This thing's useful. The Tapir Sage and the little tea ceremony. It's a healing pet. I like this thing. This is a good familiar. Tapir Sage. Go Tapir Sage. I like the Shikigami too. And I like that it's flexible for different damage types. I might be missing something on the Makhluk wayang. So if anybody has ideas about non-hostile interact actions, I'll be doing research after this, and I guess I'll find more. Wish I'd done so beforehand. Can't think of any off the top of my head. Thank you for joining me for Familiars, new abilities, and specific familiars. I appreciate you being here, and if you're a patron, thank you for being here during each of these videos. I appreciate you a lot, and so do the kitties that took my treats and ran. If anybody's interested in joining us on Discord to chat about nerdy things, mostly Pathfinder 2, but nerdy things, also just weird crap, because we're weird people. Links in the Discord. We also do a contest every 2 weeks, I think it's going to be. Right now it's been 1 week. For the coolest, most interesting, flexible, thematic build. How much richness can you stuff into your character idea, and you only get 6 levels to do it. Anyway, if you want to see more Tian Xia goodness, playlist here. And we did familiars. Here's the rest of the familiar playlist here. Because familiars are a thing, and they're cool. Okay, thanks, bye.